Hello, this is Gray Hughes of Gray Hughes Investigates on YouTube. Please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. I put out a recent video talking about a white vehicle underneath a lone tree that was described in a tip given to law enforcement months after the Idaho 4 murder case of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonzalez, and the killer is Bryan Kohberger. And a tip came in that an individual saw a white vehicle parked on Johnson Road here by this tree, and they'd seen it there, but they didn't think anything of it. But then after the probable cause came out, the guy remembered seeing the vehicle there. You know, people tend to remember some of the things when a homicide takes place, and he remembered it, and he went out there with a friend, and they used metal detectors or, looked around, and then law enforcement even went out there, and when they went there, there was disturbed earth. Now, I can't tell you if this guy's making up a story, and did he disturb the earth that the police then found later, but the police found it interesting enough that they came out with metal detectors. They looked around here, they looked on this little bridge here for a little bit, and they didn't find anything. But then it turns out a satellite image that's in that last video is showing on July 16th a white vehicle, and this is July 16th of 2022, a white vehicle parked underneath the very same large tree. Now, Bryan Kohberger moved to Pullman on right around like June 30th of 2022. The pool party was July 9th, and this is just 7 days after the pool party. So that's why it's interesting that there's a white car parked under that very same tree. I mean, it's a miraculous photograph that actually shows a car parked there. I don't have any recent surveys of how many people parked there. I have no idea. I merely thought it was interesting. Now, in the video, I talked about that he put the knife there, and I accidentally mentioned sheath. Obviously, I know the sheath was found on the right side of Madison Mogan on her bed. I've made videos on how I think it's possible that the knife sheath was left as a calling card, because I think Bryan Kohberger wanted to do all the cool things that serial killers do. He's a nut job. So we're just taking another look at it right here. In the comments section, somebody said, Gray, why don't you compare a white Elantra from the top view to the image in the scene? And I had thought of using just a photograph before, I just didn't do it. But then they made me remember, oh yeah, I actually have a model of it. So there's things you always have to keep in mind when you're looking at satellite images. Things are distorted. For example, if you look at these homes over here, or these buildings, notice how the camera comes in kind of from the right-hand side and a little bit behind. When I say, so the camera is actually offset to the right and slightly down from this area. And so when you go all the way up even into, let's say, Moscow, Idaho, let's go to the crime scene area here. This is, again, July 16th, 2022. Look at the building here. See, this is the 1112 King Road building. Again, the camera is on this side of the building, everybody. I know you can't see it, but if I could make the mouse bigger, I would, but it's right here. See this car in the middle of the screen right there? This building just south of it, right here, is the house that has a camera on it, and the camera's filming in this direction. It does not have the 1122 King Road house on the camera. This over here has nothing to do with anything, this building. It's 1119 King Road. What it does have to do with is they reference it because when the vehicle's on Walenta Drive back here, you can see it right through that gap as it's driving, and then you can also see it over here, but they don't mention that in the documents. All right? So just keep in mind, images are distorted. For example, I don't even know what... I would imagine this is the front of the car here. But look at this car. Look how warped it is, right? This window does look like a larger windshield on it. This one's shorter. Now, the one that I found underneath the tree does look more like that, a little bit shorter like that. But look at what a sunroof looks like. See, it's nice and square like that. All right, and you can see the image from, it's coming from the right, because you can see the full side of the car there, and you can see the side of that car. Now look at even the 1112 King Road house. See how you can see this side of the house, but on the other side the roof actually points out because it actually is bent the other direction. So you got to keep stuff like that in mind when you're looking at images. All right, so let's go out and do exactly what we were just talking about. I think it's right there. I'm getting pretty good at just sort of finding it again. So there is the vehicle, and so let's export this image. All right, so in Google Earth up above here, you can select the image export, and then over here you can turn off all of these. I always turn them off because it makes a nice clean image, and I'm making it 4K 3840 by 2160. We're going to save the image out, and I'm going to save it over the top of an image that I already put out there. I've had to start over this video 3 times now, so I'm just showing you the process. And then in 3D Studio Max, here is a 2015 Hyundai Elantra, and I'm going to export it for just looking at it straight down. All right, and this is orthogonal view, so it doesn't really have sort of the correct perspective in terms of. All right, and I also have a camera in the scene, so if I go here, and it's actually everything's so small when you import it in, so you can see a camera right there, right? So if I look through the camera, it kind of zooms in there, and then I'm going to export this. I'm going to render it, go to render setup, and then I'm going to select 1920 by 1080, and I'm going to do a PNG file because that stores the transparency. So I'm going to save it over the top there, and when you save it the first time as a PNG, it tells you, it asks you if you want to save the alpha channel, and the alpha channel is the everything other than the object, and you can subtract that out. And I'm going to render it right now. Here we go. And there we go. It's been done. And then I'm going to go to Photoshop. And let's open up this image. This is the one we just exported. Let me turn off all the wireframe. I always hate that on there. And there it is. Right? So now we're going to open up the Elantra, which has transparency in it. Notice the little checkers on there. It removed that entire black background that it seemed to be rendering in the last little segment there. So we're going to select this, Control A, Control C, and then in here, Control V. Right now the image is in there, missing all of the black background. It's just a car all by itself. And now let's scale it down. And I'm going to bring it over here. We're going to rotate it like that. And then I think it needs to be a little bit bigger. Now the windshield already looks like something that might not be quite right. It looks shorter, like this is longer. But again, like I'm saying, when you have a camera up in the skies that's pointed in sort of at an angle, it's hard to really tell. I just want to see if this is consistent. Does it make some sense? Now look right there. People were saying, oh great, it's got a sunroof. You can't tell me that's a sunroof right there. I mean, you can say it, but the other one we just looked at a minute ago is nice and square, right? There's this white part there, and then it goes around like that, and it goes around like this. The sunroof on vehicles are normally square. If you look right here, look at all this darkness. These are all shadows. And if we look at the shadows in general, you can see that the sun is coming in at an angle like this. Right? Now look at right here. This whole part of this tree is overhanging the road, casting shadows onto the vehicle. So I think it's very likely that this is a shadow, and then this obviously is one, right? That it's a diagonal. So that's a shadow. So maybe that's a shadow too. And if you look right here, maybe, I don't know if that's a shadow part of this, but obviously it's the windshield as well. So And also, we don't know if that's actually part of the car or some reflective value. So the thing is sure, the front of the car has some similar properties. It does have, it looks, generally similar, but the windshield is different, okay? And we can't see the back portion because it's underneath the tree. So I can't tell you 100% that that's not consistent with Elantra, although the windshield's the only thing at this point that would make me go, not really sure. But it is a white car that is parked underneath that tree. The theory would be that at 5:30 in the morning, so there's people in the comments, they don't understand that the vehicle drove by there right around 5:25 in the morning, and then it drove back there again at 5:32 to 5:36. The phone turned on near Johnson. So the theory would be on the way back, because if you look at the crazy route that he took, he drove all the way from Moscow, Idaho, and then he took this wild route. Let me turn back on the roads, makes it easier. He drove down, and once he got back on the 95 at some point, he cuts across here. And they know that because the cell towers show him north of the tower as he's moving across. So he makes his way across, and then he makes his way up here, and around 5:20, drives by Johnson, and then 5:25, he shows up right up in here on camera after making his way to Johnson Road. And interestingly, the tree is on Johnson Road right there. Law enforcement does not know specifically that he turned right on Kuykendall, so I've said that maybe he turned here or right there. I think this would be an easier route. So you turn your phone on to make sure you don't miss this little road here called Gimmon Road. So he turns his phone on at 5:32, just, a few minutes before getting there, and makes sure he gets onto Gimmon. Then he turns it off just before getting to Gimmon. And then he drives around like this. And then right here takes a quick right. And this is at 5:32 in the evening. All right. So in the morning, he goes home, does all that stuff, drives back out into Moscow, then goes down to Clarkston and, Lewiston and Clarkston. And then there's 4 hours of missing time where maybe he was scouting out a location to permanently put the knife and bloody clothing. And then eventually, once he's decided where this spot is, he drives back up here and he takes the knife and bloody clothing to that location he discovered earlier in the day. Now, you would think that maybe he would have already had all this stuff planned out, but who knows with Bryan Kohberger. Maybe he was doing things on the fly at the end. So something to think about, though, is last night on the show, another person on Facebook, Julie, contacted me and said, hey, remember that one tip that came in? And yeah, there was a tip that came in of a woman in Clarkston right around 2 to 2:30 who saw an individual by the Red Wolf Crossing Bridge. So, again, the short recap here is once he came in on Highway 95, like at 12:30-ish, he comes in, his phone, he tried to go to Costco here first, so he comes over this bridge, tries to go to Costco, he isn't allowed in. Then he goes over to Kate's Cup of Joe, which is right here. He drives through here, does like a U-turn, comes back out, and then he goes down to the Albertsons right here, and he's seen on camera. Now, what's interesting is I think law enforcement knows what he was wearing. And if you remember the thumbs up image, he's probably wearing that same clothing since that was at 10:30. The white shirt, probably has jeans on, but it's kind of like a, business casual, right? So this tip that came in, they said that around 2 to 2:30, they were crossing over the Red Wolf Crossing Bridge and were turning right here and then saw somebody walking, really oddly, a person walking down here that was wearing business casual. And that law enforcement already had that 10:30 image and knew what he was wearing and took that tip incredibly seriously. They had, some of the highest level detectives showing up out there trying to figure out what You know, if her story made sense, etc. But the fact that you could marry up a person that he was missing actually during that same time frame, you know, because at 1:04 is when he was pulling out of the Albertsons parking lot, and then you don't see him until, or even get any information on him until 5:32 in the evening. So this is during that time frame where he was off the radar, so to speak. So she sees this guy walking there wearing business casual. Now, I don't know if she described what color shirt he was wearing, etc., but if she'd said white, etc., things like that, these officers would have been, oh my God, I've been just so interested, and they were. They followed up 2 different times, trying to figure out, I don't know if it ever led anywhere, but they might have thought Kohberger threw his knife in the river down there. Seems like a kind of a stupid place to do that, but this is exactly the route you take when you want to go to Wawaway Park. So when I was just there recently, once you leave Kate's Cup of Joe here, you just go on, I think you just head south until you get to Highway 12 here. Then you go over that bridge, and then this highway, 193 right here, takes you all the way around. It's right there. There you go. So this is Wawaway Park. So obviously, if he kept driving up there, maybe there was another spot he decided to put the weapon. Don't know. But that is how you get to Wawaway Park after going over that bridge, the Red Wolf Crossing Bridge. But it was interesting how the detectives were so interested in that information. So is this where, some place like this where he decided to put it, and then he had to go back up to the lone tree to collect the items and then bring them back down to these spots later? Maybe when he came down here, he decided, you know what? He was scouting it out down here, for example. He wasn't getting rid of anything. He was just looking. And so when he came back later, maybe he drove down Highway 193 and tossed it somewhere much further up the canyon there. All right. So anyways, I thought I'd put out that video. Let me know what you think in the comments. I think the windshield length is different quite a bit. I mean, other than that, it does have some similarities, the hood. It looks kind of rounded there, but this is also rounded. And it's not clear enough to literally say, oh my God, that's not it. We don't know what's going on in the image in this whole area here. We have no idea. Shadows, there could be reflections, there could be all kinds of other things going on. But got to put it out there. When you see different things, you look at it, and I want to keep you guys updated, and you can update what you think. All right? So I want to thank everybody for watching the video. If you could hit that like button, share the video, and subscribe. And as I always say, until next time, be safe out there.